Lindsey McNabb grows agencies for a living. Often our jobs in advertising are to grow brands. And if you haven't read the book, How Brands Grow by Byron Sharp, you should go do that. It's a classic. But we know Lindsey's job is to grow agencies. It sounds simple, but it's far from it. As the executive director of growth at Fig, she is responsible for finding, evaluating, and pitching new business for the agency. She's done more than all right, as Fig has been awarded on Ad Age's A-list for 4 consecutive years, Ad Age's Best Places to Work, Adweek's Fastest Growing Agencies, and they're on LinkedIn's Top Startups. These awards are won because of her direct work and from the rest of the agency, of course. New business is not often mentioned in the undergrad experience and seems like an illusion to those outside of it. Lindsey tells her story working at incredible agencies like TBWA, McGarry Bowen, and Droga 5. And I thought it was really interesting to hear about how Rob Schwartz, CEO of TBWA New York, somehow tricked her into new business, which is a great story. If you're curious about the new business process, if you're competitive, articulate, organized, ambitious, this episode is for you. She talks about her role, the process, and what it takes to be great in it. To see her recommended resources and to connect with Lindsey, you have to go to our Instagram page, @enteringad. One more time, that's @enteringad. Also, Chicago Portfolio School supports this episode. They are a 1-year portfolio school option, and their job is to get you a job in creative advertising. With over 4,000 alumni, they're pretty good at it. Check them out at chicagoportfolio.com and message the chat box Breaking and Entering sent you, and they'll send you a free marker, or they'll even let you sit in on a class for free. Now, on with the show. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. Lindsey McNabb, welcome to the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast. How you doing? Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. You are an executive director of growth at Fig, and you must be doing your job pretty damn well, because the past 2 years you've been one of the fastest growing agencies, according to Ad Age. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we have been on the Ad Age Agency A-list for 4 consecutive years as well. So
Wow.
If you haven't heard of Fig, you all should hear of Fig.
Yeah, well, I've heard of it, and that's because I'm subscribed to Ad Age, and everybody listening should be too. That's one of the basic ones. We ask for recommendations for resources, which we'll talk about later. But I always say that should be muscle memory. Ad Age, Adweek, those should be subscribed to. But tell us about yourself, your role. I think you're our first executive director of growth. So we're going to talk about that this whole episode. But tell us about yourself.
Well, first of all, I should say I want to change my title because I do growth and marketing. So It's a little misleading, but I have been in the industry for, I think it's almost 10 years now. I actually started as an intern at TBWA. I worked on the Jameson and Kahlua accounts, which is super fun when you're 20 years old. Still fun. And then, I got a job at TBWA out of college. I was very fortunate. And then I worked there on the global Nissan business. And I started my career actually as an account executive. So I didn't even know new business was a thing. I got tricked into it, to be totally honest. I just became kind of that go-to person for our CEO at TBWA. The best advice I can give you, and you'll probably hear me say this a few times, is if someone asks you to do something, say yes. I've always been someone that says yes to everything at work, and it's paid off because I think I've had some good success over the years. But yeah, I became the CEO's kind of go-to. He needed a video, I would do it. He needed someone to manage his Instagram page, I would do it. He needed a new website, I would do it. And slowly but surely, he was like, I want you to work on the new business team. And I I don't know, I liked account management, but it was, I don't know, kind of boring. Like I was working on Nissan. I was thinking about cars every day. Like I was ready to do something new and interesting. And he was like, just trust me. I think you'll like it. I'm like, okay. So I did. I took a leap of faith. I trusted him. I say I got tricked into it. I totally did. Rob Schwartz, that was your fault.
Oh,
Um,
Rob Schwartz. I've been trying to get him on this pod.
I'll
He's
have to tell him
phenomenal.
that we spoke. Yeah,
Yeah.
Rob tricked me. He's the reason why I'm in new business. But yeah, and the rest was history. After that, I went to Droga 5. And then recently I was at Dentsu for the last a little over 3 years. And then I recently joined Fig, I guess it was about 6 months ago,
Oh,
as
wow.
their first ever executive director of growth and marketing soon.
There's so much to unpack there. That's such a great high level story, but I want to kick it back now to, not everybody gets an internship and a job at TBWA right out of college. That would be nice. That's everybody's dream agency or one of the dream agencies. So I want to know, why did you pick advertising and then how you even stumbled into that internship? Because that's your break-in story, that first part. That's super
Yeah.
important. That's your foundation and account management. So tell us, like, how did you get to that first break-in part of your career?
So I applied for the internship like everybody else, to be honest. And I wrote like a very compelling letter, basically begging and pleading as to why I should work there. Um, and I will say, like, my dad is an executive in a different industry, but I've always looked up to him and his work ethic for a very long time. And he's always told me, like, control the controllables and outwork
Mhm.
everybody, and you'll be fine. And that's what I did. I think I was the only intern that was at the office basically every night till 8 or 9 o'clock. And I'm not saying sell your soul, but I am a little bit. Like, I think, everybody wants, not everybody, but I remember getting my job at TBWA, and on day one, they were like, a million people would die to have this job right now. And so it's expected that you work really hard, and kind of prove yourself when you first start. And I think, I always say advertising is not for the faint of heart. I think you have to really like it, and you have to really want to, put in the blood, sweat, and tears to advance. And that's something that I've just always done. I've always wanted to outwork everybody, I guess.
So was this a senior year internship or was this like a junior year internship? What was the timeline of this
It
internship?
was going into my junior year, and I
Was
knew,
Oh, really? So you were a
or sorry,
sophomore?
going into my senior year. I lied.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Yeah, that's like the classic spot, that's like the big
Yeah,
internship. But nowadays it's starting to push towards senior year. You're gonna get an internship when you graduate, especially for
I
those
know.
more creative roles. Maybe not so much for the account strategy roles, but continue. So it was your going into your senior year.
I was going into my senior year. So the summer, I
Mhm.
interned for 3 months.
Yeah.
And I knew at the end that they were going to pick a few people to potentially get hired after senior year. And I
Were you
was just like,
assuming that or did you know?
they mentioned, like, if,
Okay.
if it works out, there may be jobs when they graduate. They didn't put it in stone, but I knew
Right.
well enough that potentially. Um, so yeah, I was like, I'm gonna get hired. Like I spent the summer just doing anything that anybody needed from me. Tried to make connections with anybody I
Mhm.
could at the agency. I think, you know, there's a lot of people intern, and internships are brief, so you have to be memorable.
Yes.
And that was what I said I would do. I would try to be memorable
And this
in a
was
good.
TBWA New York?
Yes.
Shy Day, New York?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, Nissan's their big client. Mm, I think they have like Bud Light right now, but
Oh, do they?
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
They had
So
I worked on Nissan out of
yeah.
school. But when I was an intern, I worked on Jameson and Kahlua.
Right, right. So I think let's hover here for a second. Um, I think that's really interesting because you said you need to be memorable during an internship. Obviously, being in person can help that. You're shaking hands, you're in person, it's a lot easier. you know what would you say, like, what advice do you have for people now, like, to be memorable during an internship is harder digitally? I think that's fair to say. What can
Very.
they do to be memorable nowadays, what if it's digital and in this environment? Like, what do you
I mean,
what ideas?
I'm such a proponent of, like, demonstrating passion for the industry. I've had some interns that I've felt like they feel like I should feel more lucky to have them than they are lucky to have the internship. And I think
Wow. That's kind of ballsy.
I
Interesting.
mean, it's interesting. I think a lot of people think that they're owed an internship to a degree. And I remember being in college too, feeling like, well, they're just lucky. I'm working for free and I'm working all the time. But the reality is, and now that I manage interns sometimes,
Mhm.
is that having an intern is an incredible amount of work for anybody that has an intern most of the time.
Wow.
Most of the
Yeah.
time, it's an incredible amount of training. And then this person is only there for 3 months and then they go back to school. So you're basically training them to then leave. And
Right.
so I think like showing a deep appreciation, showing a passion for the industry, um, getting involved and offering to take things off of people's plates is just like it goes above and beyond. And I think anybody would be appreciative of it,
Yeah.
to be honest.
You know what I think my take is looking back at my internships? I wasn't when I had an internship my sophomore year going into my junior year. And I wasn't doing anything super productive for the agency. And I don't think there's a level of expectation that I was supposed to. I obviously put that on myself, but no matter how hard I worked, it wasn't like I was doing a lot of like meaningful work at the time. But what
Yeah.
I did make an effort to do was to get to know people, make people laugh. I would do a food review called Gino's Eats, and I would rank food reviews, and I would send it out, and they all made T-shirts at the end of my internship with like a fake logo. I
Hey,
think
there
if you
you
put out,
go. Be memorable. You were all over it.
yeah, like I stepped up and ran the social account. It's like I wasn't getting any new business for anybody at any time soon, for sure. But I had fun with it. I think that's, that also plays a part in internships is
I
being humble.
totally like that is exactly when I say be memorable. It's just like, make everyone stay a little bit better. Everyone is working so hard all the time. And I think interns have a very unique opportunity to kind of like make someone stay a little bit better, make someone stay a little bit easier, come
Mhm.
in and have them, be missed when it's all said and done.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stress. Like I always thought like I need to prove myself, and like with the work. And I don't know, maybe it's just like focusing on just being a good person and being fun and trying your hardest rather than like, staying up till midnight trying to. I don't know. That's just
Yeah,
my
I
my
think
thought.
that's fair. I think that's fair.
So you did an account management. So you did that at TBWA, and then you in New York, and then they offered you a job at the end of the internship, like for next year. How did that work?
We ended up staying in touch. They said you were great and that we really enjoyed having you on. Like, please reach out to us when you're ready for a
Okay.
job.
Wow.
And I did, and I stayed in touch with everybody though, like all of my account managers I would like talk to all the time. I made sure I was doing regular check-ins. I went to Rutgers, so I was
Mhm.
local. So I came in and had drinks with my old manager. Like I really wanted to make sure if and when I was ready to work in advertising, which I had decided at the end of college that's what I wanted to do, that I would have the opportunity to kind of pick back up where we left off.
Gotcha. And I guess you can do some of those basics digitally, like,
Yeah,
keeping in touch,
totally.
coffee chats online. Maybe some people are willing to go out for vaccinated to meet up or for coffee, whatever it may be, but keeping in
Yeah,
touch.
virtual coffee. I'm always down for a virtual coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And people are willing to do that. So that's awesome. So you stayed in, they said at the end of your internship, like keep in touch, we'll hire you. That's like probably gotta be the best feeling in the world.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah. Okay.
It was a
So
long
you
time
took
ago, but I was excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the break-in story, and that's super important. But you show the fundamentals of internship to convert to a entry-level job. We're always glad to hear that, and that's super important. Just to remind people that the fundamentals, working hard, being nice, networking, we can say that a million times, and it's always beneficial to our audience. They always want to hear
Yeah.
that we
Well, it's
reinforce.
funny, like, I think you want these people to root for you. You know what I mean? And if they can't hire you at their agency, you want them to call the 900 contacts they have to find you a job elsewhere. And I think like anyone who's ever worked on my team, I would go to the end of the earth for to get
Mhm.
a job somewhere. Even if they work for me and they're like, I want to try something new. If they've worked hard and have been a good partner, like of course. And I think that's the advertising industry is very small and it's very incestuous, and we all know each other or we've worked with each other at some point. And so
Yeah,
you want someone to want to help you get a job. I think that's the goal.
that's super important. That's a great point. Yes, love that. Um, okay, so you did account management, and how would you explain account management to somebody that's never a freshman in college that maybe just heard of it once or twice? You know, what's the basic roles there?
So account management is a very hard job. It is, you have to make sure your client is happy and well taken care of at all times. So it's client service. It's making sure you are driving whatever they need from a deliverables perspective. As you get a little bit more senior, it's making sure that everything you're doing in service of the account ladders up strategically to what you're trying to accomplish. It's making sure the clients have somebody to call whenever they need to talk to somebody or they need assets ASAP. There's production side of it, so going on shoots and all that fun stuff. It's been a little while. I haven't been in account
Mhm.
for a while, but
Yeah,
that
but
was that's the basics.
Lindsay, I think it's so interesting to me when we do college visits for my career or when I talk to students, a third of them, if not two-thirds, will say, I want to go into account management and advertising. And
It's
take
so
that for
fun.
whatever that is. I just think that's so interesting when there's all these different possibilities, and don't discount the creative side as well. I think a lot of people are intimidated about copywriting, art direction, which they should
Well,
it
it's,
should be
funny
naturally.
enough, I was convinced I was going to be a copywriter. So I was like a little bit of a lost soul. I knew I loved advertising, but I was like, I told Rob Schwartz, Rob's like, go take a copywriting class and see how it goes. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. So I did. I went to SVA. I took a copywriting class at night.
School of
And
Visual
I was
Arts.
like, this is totally not what I want to be doing with my life.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I think I'm an advertising nerd. So I didn't know where I fit in advertising, but I knew I wanted to be doing something.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said you wanted copywriting, and was this while you were an account management executive?
Yeah, I was an account executive on Nissan.
Right.
And I kept saying, because I don't know, I spent a lot of time with Rob and I kept saying, like, I think I want to be a copywriter. And he was a copywriter.
Right.
So
Right.
he was like, okay, well, if you want to go do it then. Like if you something you like, let's see if we can help you move into that. Um, and I ended up that wasn't what I wanted to do.
At
But
least you tried
I'm
it.
glad he humored me. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So you said you were a little bit of a lost soul, and Rob is obviously a copywriter background. Now he's a CEO, one of the few creative CEOs. I feel
Yeah.
um, there needs to be more of that. But how'd you get into new business? You said Rob kind of tricked you into it.
Yeah.
So you're a account manager. How'd you get into new business?
I owe my new business life to Rob Schwartz. Rob, if you ever listen to this, thank you. No, I don't know. It's funny. I became his go-to. Like I say, you want people to root for you. And I think Rob, I always felt like really was rooting for me.
Hmm.
He asked me to start the women's group at TBWA, me and my creative partner. Felicia. And so we did. We started the TBWA women's group. We branded it. We launched it to the agency. And right before we did that, he asked me if I would pitch it to the head of new business at the time. Little did I know that was basically my interview. Um, and the next day they were like, we want you to join the new business team. And I was like, I see what you did there. And then I ended up, new business is a bit of a drug. I've been hooked on it ever since, to be honest.
Wow. So the pitch for the women's group was your interview to new business.
Basically. They
Okay.
didn't tell me that at the time, but the next day I was like,
Sure.
oh, okay, I get
Well, it
it.
makes sense. You're pitching.
Yeah.
Um,
Sorry, there,
how many
but just
people? How many people were you pitching to? Like, what was the scene? Paint the picture for us.
it was just the head of new business. I had been working on it with Rob, but Rob he said he wanted me to share it with the head of new business. And so I said, okay, I will. So I had no idea. I walked into her office. I took her through the deck. She asked me questions. I answered them. And then I was like, okay, glad you're up to speed. And then I left not thinking anything of it. And then the next day, they were like, hey, we're looking for someone to move into new business. we know you've been working on Nissan for a while. Like, what do you think? And I literally wrote back and said, what is new business? Because I had no idea what new
Wow.
business even was. And that was when Rob was like, just trust me. I think you'll be good at
Wow. This is phenomenal. I'm loving this a lot,
it.
actually. Okay.
Very
So
weird, but
no, this is great. This is a great story. I'm really enjoying this. So then you figured out what new business was and you accepted.
yeah.
Okay, so what did they say it was? Teach us what new business is because I'm
Well,
curious.
it's fun. At the time I was like, okay, cool. Like that sounds like fine. They're like, it's like account management, but for like internal opportunities. It's totally not. I mean, it sort of is, but not really. Um, Throughout my lost soul life in advertising, I have realized that I'm a bit of a frustrated strategist. And I think what I didn't like about account management when I was pretty junior and just out of school was that I was like far away from the actual creation of the work.
Mhm.
And impacting it strategically, making sure that you're kind of birthing this amazing campaign that goes out into the world. We were really in charge of like the latter half of that, right? Like when you're an account executive, you're like making sure the shoot goes okay and making sure you have the files and all
Right.
of that. New business is like roll up your sleeves in the thick of it. You're creating what you would create in 6 to 12 months in 6 weeks. It's very fast paced. It's very high pressure. I played Division 1 soccer, so I've always been very competitive. It's fiercely competitive. You're up against your friends at other agencies, which is always really fun. And it's new all the time, right? I could be thinking about pizza one day, and the next day I'm thinking about makeup, and the next day after that I'm thinking about travel. So I just liked it. I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I'm learning so many things about different industries. I'm meeting all different kinds of clients, and I'm working. Most importantly to me, I think I'm working every phase of the ideation process, which is what I love. Is like being in the thick of it, cracking the strategy with the strategist, and then briefing the creatives, watching the creative come to life. Like that's where the fun is.
Okay. This sounds really fun. High pace, competitive. Sounds like a perfect spot for you, and it is, obviously. Um, so what is the process like? And what's the team formation? How does it a new business team, what does it look like and how does it function? Whether that's if you want to take it to your role today or in general terms, I'll let you speak high level on
Yeah.
process and function.
So I'll talk about my team today because they're
Okay.
the best. I like to think of our team as the heartbeat of the agency. I think we run all of our growth efforts, so all new business, and then we also run all of our PR and marketing efforts. So where you see us on panels, if you see an ad or an article in Ad Week, my team has had something to do with that. And so I really want like new business is hard. People have full-time jobs and then they're asked to pitch on top of them. Um, and you have to make sure that people want to be a part of your process. People want to be a part of your pitches. People are excited by them. Otherwise, it's
Mhm.
really hard to get good thinking out of people. Um, so my team, I have myself, I run, all of our efforts across growth and marketing. I work into our CEO, Judith. And then I have a manager of new business. I have a full-time designer who sits on my team and does all of our not only deck design, but like our social media pages, any like in agency party stuff. Like she handles Fig's branding.
Nice.
And then I have a PR coordinator, and then I also work with a PR agency that helps us. So we have a little team, but then when pitches come on, we have 20 to 30 people in the agency touch any given pitch at any given time.
Wow. So you have to pick are you in charge of picking the right people to work on the pitch process, depending
I
on their
mean,
strengths?
not solely in charge, but I do have a heavy suggestion
Sure.
at the start of processes.
Okay, we jumped over tell us like about Fig then. How many people are in it? We know it's growing super fast and we know that it's on the A list, so we know it's good. How many people are at Fig? How would you characterize it in your agency stint? You've been at plenty of great agencies, TBWA, Droga 5, just to name two, I'm sure more. What is Fig all about?
So it's funny. I've gone back and forth. I started big holding company. I went independent. I went back to big holding company, most recently at Dentsu. Now I'm back at independent.
Mm-hmm.
I love independent agencies. I just think, creativity just lives and breathes every inch of our office space. And I loved my time that I worked at Droga5. And so when Fig called, um, I was actually 30 weeks pregnant at the time. And I was like,
Oh,
it's
wow.
not a great time for me to be getting a new job. I'm about to have a baby. And they're like, just talk to us. Like you may not be into it, whatever. So I did. And it felt a lot like Droga5 back when I started at Droga5. We are like on the precipice of growth and just completely taking off. We have about 120 people. We just moved into a new office space in the heart of Soho. It's stunning. We have won 8 new clients this year. We have won agency A-list 4 years in a row. We were named to LinkedIn's top startups
I
twice.
saw that too. Yep.
Yeah. So, it just feels like really cool. And I think, I've learned every opportunity I've had in my career, I've learned different things at, and I don't think anything is ever a bad opportunity. You learn new things. I will say I love being at an independent agency. I just think everything I do is in service of creativity. And I don't know if I've necessarily felt that in my holding company
Yep.
roles. And I just love the work. Like I said, I'm a little bit of a frustrated strategist. I want to be like in the weeds of what we're making. And that's what I can do here.
I love it. Yeah, we've a lot of our conversations on this podcast is independent versus holding companies, the battle between the two,
I
but you can
know.
really learn. There's a lot of pros and cons of both, and pretty much
It's funny. I think if I could give unsolicited advice, but I'm
do it.
going to take my opportunity. It's to do both. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, I don't think that there's actually a right or wrong. I think you'll probably enjoy one more than the other. But you learn so many different things at the different types of agencies you work at. And I always said, like, we're the one industry where it's okay to bump around a lot because you learn different methodologies, different approaches, different things. And I think it's important that you try both, to be honest.
Yeah, but I always thought my theory was always start large, then you can go small. But I've heard that's also not the case, because if you do great work at a small agency, you can go large. So I don't know. Just you can obviously bounce around. Doesn't really matter when.
I've always thought less about the agency and more about who I'd be working for, to be
So
honest.
smart. So smart.
I've always wanted to be able to work for someone I can learn from. And
Mhm.
if I look past at all my past bosses, I've learned something different from all of them. And I'm very close still with all of them. And so that's
Mhm.
another thing is
Because the people change constantly. The names of the
totally.
agency stays the same, but the people change
Yeah,
all the
you
time.
want to make sure that you are in sync with that person. You're going to be spending a lot of time with them, and you also want to make sure you can learn from them, because that's what's important.
Okay, so I want to go more. Because from the feedback I got from our student agency group at the University of Illinois,
Yeah.
shout out AdBuzz, they said that I need to start talking more about the specific role that you have in more detail. So we're going to
Okay.
go even more detail. I'm going to go back to this conversation. What does your day-to-day look like now? What skills do you need to have to be successful at your role?
I mean, that's a loaded question. So let me think about it.
Yeah, I load them up.
My day, yeah. My no day ever looks the same for me
Everybody I've ever asked that question to says that.
No, it's true, because I'm
Yeah.
always pitching different things or doing different types of things. But in general, I usually have 1 or 2 live pitches going on at any given time. And for those of you who don't know who's involved in a pitch, it's all the most senior people in the agency. So I joke that my full-time job is managing the management team, but it basically is. I need to make sure that our founders are okay. I need to make sure that we're all in a room, everyone agrees with what we're pitching. So I would say on a day-to-day basis, we have like 1 or 2 things that we're working on with the partner group. I also have outreach to our PR agency and the publications we're working on. So there's usually about 1 or 2 campaigns at any given time that are about to go live, and we need to make sure the press releases are prepared. that our PR agency is briefed to go to Adweek and Ad Age to pitch to those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the other part of my job is like not necessarily hunting, but like fielding opportunities. So, I like to have a full pipeline at all times, which means I need to have a couple of RFPs. If you guys don't know what RFPs are, that's called requests for proposals. And that's where a pitch starts. So you get an RFP either from a consultant or a client directly. And then from there, there's usually about 12 agencies that participate in the RFP process. From there, it gets whittled down and you get invited to chemistry. So for those of you who watch The Bachelor, it's kind of like The Bachelor, to be honest. They start with a big group of agencies and it goes down from there.
Wow.
Chemistry is usually about 6 agencies. So I think of it as your first date.
They
You
call
need to
chemistry?
chemistry.
Is that
Literally,
a
you're making
universal term?
yeah, you're making sure that there's good chemistry between the clients and the agency.
Okay. What goes on in
Uh,
that?
That is like they call it a creds meetings. So agency credentials. Every
Mhm.
agency has a set of cred slides, which I didn't know when I was an account executive, but I know now. It's basically what the narrative is. So if I'm pitching as Fig, I would show up of like, here's the story of Fig. Here are our capabilities. Here's a case study or two, and then let's talk about your business. And you would bring some early thoughts on their brand.
So it's just like the initial chemistry presentation. Got it.
Yeah,
Why don't
and I've
you, is that super secret, like classified files? Like, why don't you share that to the public to just, branding? I guess that's just your general branding.
You do. I mean, it to a degree. I mean, if you
Yeah.
go on websites, you kind of get like
Yeah.
Fig story is we're storytellers for the information age, and then we
Sure.
kind of bring that to life. So it's not
Yeah.
super secret.
Okay. So you have, okay. So this is interesting to me that now we're really, I think people are going to appreciate this. So you go from chemistry and then you get the thumbs up or thumbs down from there. You get the rose.
Yep, you get the rose. And then you get invited to brief. And this is rough. I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of a different process, but this is pretty much the standard. So you get briefed by the client. Here is what we want you to do. Here's the problem you have to solve. Have fun. And then you go back for what they call work session. Or a tissue. That's another word that they use. It's some rough ideas on like early thoughts, kind of. And then you have a final pitch, which is the big reveal, a full go to market 360 integrated campaign that I like to say they could put on air tomorrow. Um,
Okay.
and that, and then from there, you get the final rose if and when you hopefully win.
What's the tissue process again? That's like,
Tissue
the-
is like you bring in a strategy and then
okay.
you like a strategic platform and then like 3 to 4 creative territories. And then the hope is that you walk out of that meeting and the client's like, I hate 2 territories. Here are the 2 I like. Go blow them out for the final meeting.
Wow. So intense, super competitive.
Yeah.
How quick is this process or how long is it?
It can be anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks. I think 6 is like the sweet spot. I prefer a fast pitch, to be honest.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
Little counterintuitive. I think some people are like, but it's so fast. I'm like, yeah, but you're in and out, and then you kind of
Right.
know versus it having drag on for
You don't
months.
want you don't want to drag it on.
No.
Yeah. And you're pretty good at those? I mean, you're doing how many of those how many of those are you doing a week, you said, or how many a month?
We probably have like 2. Well, I would think of it quarterly is probably easier because they
Okay.
go on
What's
for a
your
little
goal?
while. Um, 4 or 5 a quarter, I would
Yeah.
say.
That's
For
intense.
now, I think, when I was at Droga, I was pitching 4 or 5 things at a time,
Yeah.
but we were a 600-person agency. I now
Right.
work at Fig. We have 120 people, and I think if I have 2 mottos about pitching, it's, um, 1, always be a meeting ahead. So show up with what you would be expected to bring to the next meeting in the first
Love
meeting.
that.
And then also, you're in it to win it. Like I don't want to half pitching doesn't work. There's never a pitch that half the amount of effort you're going to win. Every agency is going above and beyond. So if we can't fully commit to it, then we just shouldn't do it.
I think you just made this translates perfectly to the job interview process as well for our
Totally.
students out there. You just said, show up with more like the next step, whatever's expected. Like, maybe when you're interviewing, If you get to the interview spot, show up with some samples, show up with some
Yeah,
work, some ideas. I like
yeah,
that.
I agree.
Hmm.
I totally agree.
Gotcha. So did you leave, are you obsessed with the process? Is that why you went to Fig, the smaller to help it grow even more? Is that like what led you there?
Um, yeah, I mean, so I specialize in kind of helping agencies find their story and put it down on paper.
Mm-hmm.
So what was attractive about McGarry is actually I worked a lot of ex-Stroga people were there. And McGarry was at this kind of McGarry Bowen, which is Dentsu's largest creative agency, was at this place where it kind of needed to find its next story. Like they have Amex, they have United Airlines, they have Disney, they have these amazing clients, but they hadn't won new business in quite a long time. And we found out that it was really because the story they were telling in the marketplace just had to evolve.
Sure.
And so I spent a long time doing that in partnership with our global CSO. And once that was on
Cool.
paper and kind of working and all the machine was built, I was ready for my next thing.
Hmm.
And I wasn't looking, to be honest. Fig called me and I said I was very pregnant. It was not a good time. But it's exactly it. It's like we're ready to take off and we need to get something down on paper and we need to start marketing ourselves. And like, can you help us do that? And I'm like, yes, I totally can.
Love it. So interesting. So are there, for the audience out there that's interested in new business, are there entry level new business role? I haven't really seen
Totally.
many, but I haven't looked for them. So there is such thing as a new business entry level role.
New business coordinator, growth coordinator, PR coordinator. I'm looking for a PR coordinator right now if anyone does PR.
Wow.
But yeah, you can start. I mean, you don't really need experience to work on new business. I think you need to be hungry. I think you need to be very organized. I think you need to
Mhm.
be able to be around very senior people with different opinions all the time and kind of go with the flow.
Sure.
Because like remember I was sort of joking, but it's true. Like we manage the management team at all times.
That
So
can be
uh,
intimidating sometimes.
yeah, I think you have to be comfortable with that sort. And it's not
Mhm.
for everyone. Like I've had people from account management want to give it a try and they're like, oh, I don't want to deal with the agency founders all the time. And I'm like, that's totally valid. Like you
Yeah.
don't have so yeah, feeling comfortable, I guess, would be
Gotcha.
another thing.
I love it. Cool. Okay. Any other pieces of advice that we didn't, I'm glad we learned a lot about your role and your story. Any other advice that you've learned just throughout the years we haven't talked about that you want to get out there?
Um, well, one, I hope I was helpful to anybody. If anyone has questions, just hit me up.
Love it.
And two, I honestly think the best advice I ever got was when I was an intern, and it was just like be a student of the industry.
Mhm.
And I know you had asked like for my recommendations in terms of what types of things I consume to get inspired. I live on like right now TikTok. Everybody is asking about in their briefs, and I live on TikTok to make sure that I can speak to it. I think it's like understanding what the clients are looking for and being a student of it. So if it's understanding the channels, understanding what brands are doing on all those channels, what are people doing on TikTok that's interesting? Why is Dunkin' Donuts the number one followed brand on TikTok? What are they doing with Gen Z that's interesting and different than the other brands? And then also I think like making sure that you're immersed in culture and getting like read the New York Times, read Left Set's weekly newsletter, get on LinkedIn, see what's happening, and then of course keep track of the industry on the usual ad age and ad week. But it's
It's a fun,
important.
it's a fun industry. I think people forget. It sounds like
Totally.
it's a fun, interesting, always evolving industry. That's why I love talking about it so much and why I'm in it. So
It's true. And ideas come from anywhere. Like, I think that's what people forget. You don't have to be a CCO to have an amazing idea. You can be an intern and chirp up in a meeting, and then that could be the winning idea. So uh,
seriously, that's so true.
don't be afraid to speak up.
Great. Awesome. So they can reach out to you. I will have your contact information. I'll have your LinkedIn profile. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
I'll have that in our Instagram at entering ad along with those resources that you mentioned, and they can reach out to you. And this has been phenomenal. Really great episode. So thank you so much,
Good.
Lindsey. This has been great.
Well, I'm honored, and thank you for reaching out. This has been so fun.
Yep. Okay. Have a great day.
You too.
Did you hear anything on this episode about a job you'd like to have someday, soon, in advertising, strategy, design? The kind of job where you use your brain and your creativity? If you did, chances are a portfolio can really help you get that job. That's where Chicago Portfolio School comes in. They have programs and classes that help you show off your thinking and get you the job you want. So visit them at chicagoportfolio.com. And if you drop my name, Gino, into the chat box, they'll send you more info and a cool Sharpie. Or just some more info. You can decide that. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to this entire episode of the Breaking and Entering Advertising podcast. If you like what you heard, it would mean a lot to us and help us grow and get better guests and better break-ins if you can go to Apple Podcasts and leave us 5 stars and a small review if you have the time. Be sure to connect with our guests if you like what they said by going to our Instagram at Breaking and Entering Pod. That's all one word, Breaking and Entering Pod on Instagram. We have links to their portfolios and their LinkedIn, and they want to connect, so do that. And thank yous. Thank you to Mikey Malarkey, our audio engineer, and Buchan Zhang, our creative director. Can't do without you two, and a team from the University of Illinois. It's a student team from the agency called AdBuzz. They're a PR agency, and it's been a pleasure working with them. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next week with another amazing guest.